What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Draft Hub. Today, we are going to be taking a look at our Conference USA predictions for the 2025-26 college football season. Rolling right along, I've done the MAC, I've done the Mountain West, trying to get the smaller, quote-unquote, conferences out of the way first. And this is quite an intriguing conference here. You have two brand new members of the conference, not even of the conference, of the FBS in Delaware and in Missouri State. So it's going to be interesting to see how those two very, very good FCS teams move up to the FBS level. This is a conference that, especially through the transfer portal, kind of got decimated by transfers. A lot of the top teams, Western Kentucky, Sam Houston State, Jacksonville State, those are a lot of teams that were at the top, the very top of Conference USA last year, and just got decimated, especially on the defensive side, by transfers. So we're going to take a look at my predictions, and we're going to see how I think that these 12 teams will do this year. But before we do that, please leave a like and please subscribe to the channel if you enjoy content like this, NFL content, NFL draft, and of course, all football content. Let's get into it. Coming in dead last in Conference USA, I have the Florida International University Panthers. I love their logo, one of the top logos in the actual conference itself. I'm a big fan of it. Unfortunately, I do have this team going 2-10, and obviously this is not the end-all be-all. Teams can do a little bit better, do a little bit worse than my predictions, of course. Hiring Willie Simmons is a huge get for them, formerly of Florida A&M and Prairie View A&M, so he has quite the track record in FCS play of, I think it was 66-24 was his record. So that's a big hire for them to steer this program in the right direction. So they have some guidance there. Keone Jenkins is a player that I think is going to be fantastic for them. Yet again, 22 touchdowns, 8 interceptions for them last year. Brian Blades II is their defensive superstar. On the offensive side, it's rough. They lost Eric Rivers. They lost Dean Patterson. On the defensive side, they lost their top 9 tacklers from last year. This is going to be a work in progress. I think the offensive side of the ball isn't really going to be the problem. It's going to be the defensive side of the ball for them. So that's really where my concern lies. There are also 4 straight seasons of 4-8. Now this seems like a total rebuild for the Panthers, even with a great head coach at the helm in Willie Simmons. I do think that they are in for a regression this year, and then hopefully with the experience, with Simmons kind of building his culture, they'll be able to bounce back starting next year. As I'm recording this, I just realized I don't know what I did to the New Mexico State Aggies name and the record prediction. I don't know what that contrast. I don't know what that is, but I kind of like it. I'm not going to lie, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I actually did that on purpose. But at 11, in second to last place, I have the New Mexico State Aggies at 3-9, coming in with a new head coach yet again in Tony Sanchez. I'm a huge fan of Montana quarterback transfer Logan Fife. I think that he's going to add some real firepower to this offense. It really lies on the defensive side for me. The defense giving up 4.4 yards per play last year, giving up 36.3 points per game. The fact of the matter is the offense just doesn't have enough firepower to keep up with the fact that the defense just can't stop a nosebleed. And that's really the problem here for me with the New Mexico State Aggies. I would like to think that they would kind of sort of turn a corner. They do have quite a few offensive players returning. Defensive, there's always going to be huge turnover defensively. But yeah, I would love to say that I have more to say about the Aggies team. Again, interesting to see what direction Tony Sanchez takes this team. I think Logan Fife is really nice for them, but unfortunately, I can't see them winning. At most, I can't see them winning more than 4 or 5 games. So I think 3-9 is a perfect floor for them. And big fan of that logo. I don't know if that is the original logo, but I did see it on Google, and I was like, you know what? That's pretty cool. Sometimes when I do these videos, I throw in some throwback logos, or I throw in some fan concept logos. I like this one a little bit. I think this is the initial logo. It's just a swap of the colors, but I really do enjoy it. And I just think the Aggies offensively kind of sort of the same sentiment with the Florida International Panthers. I think that more of their problems are going to lie solely defensively than offensively. At 10, I have Kennesaw State. Again, I don't know what I did to these slides, but I'm kind of a big fan of whatever's going on here. But anyway, I have the Kennesaw State Owls at 10 with a record of 4-8 in their FBS debut last year. not a great season for them on paper. But towards the end of the year, they really started to figure it out. And one thing I really like about this roster for new head coach Jerry Mack is they really started to put it together. They started to gel as a cohesive unit last year, especially defensively. They lost a couple games throughout the year by one score, so that's always encouraging. And they're getting a lot of returning players, too. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, that's where this team lacks. 16 and a half points per game last year, not great. So hopefully transfer quarterback Dexter Williams II comes in, kind of lights a spark under this offense. Gabriel Benyard is a player that I like quite a bit. So I think that the pieces are in place for Kennesaw State to at least score more than 16 and a half points per game. But I think they're going to be able to rely on their defense. The 31.2 points per game they gave up last year doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. They were getting murdered early in the season and then really started to figure out and played a lot of close competitive games. So I think that the long-ish term future for this team is bright. A lot of young players that are going to develop and are going to stay in college. The only thing that you got to worry about is that damn transfer portal. So as long as those bigger schools don't come calling, I think Kennesaw State is going to be a team maybe 1 or 2 years down the road under Jerry Mack that you're going to see firmly in the middle towards the top half of Conference USA. And our first FBS debut team makes an appearance here at number 9. I have the Delaware Blue Hens. And yes, I do realize that I spelled Delaware wrong here. I don't know why. It is D-E-L-E. I'm firmly aware that it is D-E-L-A. I apologize. But I had them at 5 and 7 here, and I really wanted to put them higher, but I'm just a little bit afraid of that jump from the FCS play to the FBS play. But Ryan Carty, in his 4th year in Delaware, really has everything going right for him. I think that the Delaware Blue Hens have a really nice combination of talent and experience to make that jump and make it pretty seamlessly. Just missing out on being bowl eligible in my predictions at 5 and 7. I think the future is really bright for this team. Losing Marcus Yarns is a huge replace, but I think they have enough talent, especially in the backfield, to replace that production. I think they have plenty of experience. 12 returning starters combined between offense and defense, and that's big for a team that's jumping up from the FCS to the FBS. I feel like a lot of players would jump ship to other programs, maybe even stay in the FCS. So the fact that they are able to retain so much talent going from that jump, they should be able to rely where I think the offense might sputter a little bit early on in the season, kind of making that transition from FCS ball to FBS ball. I think the defense is going to be fine. Limited their opponents to 21 points per game last year. That's a fantastic number. That's more than a winnable number on the offensive side if you could score more than 21 points per game. So the Blue Hens have a ton of talent. I think maybe early on in the season they will struggle, but as time goes on, I think this team has more than enough talent. And I think Ryan Carty is a fantastic head coach to lead this team into what I think is going to be a very, very fruitful stint in CUSA for the Delaware Blue Hens. At 8, I have the UTEP Miners here, just missing out on a bowl game yet again. Scotty Waldron not only getting Skylar Locklear back for this year, but also getting transfer quarterback Malachi Nelson in there is huge. I do think Nelson does take a backseat to Locklear. He's been in this offense for quite some time now. He does get how it works. The offense, I don't think is going to be it's two-faced because you have Kenny Odom, Cam Thomas, and Jaden Smith as your top 3 wide receivers. That's forming probably the best overall wide receiving core in the conference. But then you lost 4 starters on the offensive line. You don't have a true blue running back 1 on this roster right now. So I think as long as teams kind of clamp down on the passing game, I think that this UTEP Miners offense is going to struggle. Defensive, they have some really, really good players. KD Johnson is a player that had 3.5 sacks last year from the interior of the defensive line. I think he's going to be great. Nate Diamond, 84 tackles. He's just another really super solid player on the defensive side. So they're going to have to do a lot of replacing. I believe that they have to replace their 8 out of their top 9 tacklers on the side. But I think the offense is going to carry this team to potentially have 5 and cautious floor for them. But I think Scotty Waldron has a good offensive game plan in mind. And the fact that if Skylar Locklear doesn't play well, you have a former 5-star recruit in Malachi Nelson behind him. That's got to be money in the bank right there, in my opinion. You know, Malachi Nelson didn't work out at Boise State, but he comes here with a fire under his ass, and who knows, he gets that playing time and he changes the course of the UTEP minors season. So this is a cautious 5-7, where I think this team has more than enough firepower on offense to probably win 6 or 7 games, but the defense and the lack of the running game is kind of where I worry for the minors. At 7, I have the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs here, coming off of quote-unquote bowl eligibility after going 5-7, and Marshall University not being eligible for their bowl game because of a bunch of transfers. The Bulldogs did step in, and 5-7 was their best mark under Sonny Cumbie, which has got to be one of the greatest coaching names in college football right now. Sonny Cumbie is a fantastic name, but they got a couple of really promising players returning on the offensive side, and Evan Bullock, 14 touchdowns, 3 interceptions last year. He is going to firmly take the starting quarterback reins. Eli Finley, 400 receiving yards last year, probably going to be their top target coming back. Cedric Woods on the defensive side, a really, really solid player. And Kobe Fields as well to lead that linebacking core. This is the number 1 defense in the Conference USA last year. Got decimated by transfers and graduations. So they're going to have to rely on their returning veterans for the most part. I think 6-6 in bowl eligibility is firmly in grasp, especially with the offensive side of the ball kind of taking a little bit more shape than years prior. But defensively, it's just going to be, I don't think this defense is going to be the number 1 unit again, purely because of all the talent that they lost. But I think Sonny Cumbie has enough players in place to be more than respectable on the defensive side and with a rebuilt defense. So I think the Bulldogs are firmly in that spot where they're going to be towards the middle of Conference USA and bowl eligible for the next few years at the very least. Yes, the second of our 2 FBS debuting teams. I have way up high, potentially, what you guys might think. At number 6, I have the Missouri State Bears. Not only do they have my favorite logo in this conference, I just love the clean look of that kind of color, that like mauve-y, like burgundy type of color, and that white accent. I love this logo. I love this team. I think Jacob Clark very early on could be the top quarterback in Conference USA. He lit the world on fire last year for Missouri State, leading them to an 8-4 record. Fantastic numbers. Ryan Beard is firmly cemented at the top for quite some time for this Missouri State Bears team. The offense is not going to be the problem. This offense could potentially shock Conference USA, and this is why I think that they're going to be as high as they are, because I think when they're at their best, they probably have the best or the second best offense in Conference USA. I'm going to say that now. But the defense is really bad, hit really, really hard by transfers. They brought in a couple of former Power 4 players from Penn State, and then they brought someone in from Oregon State as well. I don't remember the names off the top of my head. I was looking at it earlier. But yeah, the success of the Missouri State Bears really hinders on how well this defense is rebuilt. And that's kind of a common theme with Conference USA this year. There are a lot of teams that are great offensively in Conference USA, but really have to do a lot of retooling on the defensive side. And that's kind of where the Jacksonville State Gamecocks come into play. Charles Kelly taking over for the Gamecocks here. They brought in transfer quarterback Gavin Wimsatt, which I think he will be probably, I don't know if he will start week 1, but he will probably take the reins over and be their best offensive player. Yeah, I know that the Jacksonville State Gamecocks won Conference USA last year, but this team was just absolutely pummeled by offensive players leaving, defensive players leaving, transfer portals, graduations, NFL draft, you name it. I mean, they basically lost both of their best players on either side of the ball for the most part. Jeremy Latimer, cornerback, left. I believe he went to Wisconsin. And then you have Clay Webb, who is a guard who probably should have gotten drafted, but a couple of hazy things came up about Clay Webb that made him undrafted. But probably their best offensive player and their best defensive player are gone. This team on the defensive side really has to rebuild. And I think that's where the regression comes into play. I think it's going to take a year or 2 for this team to get back to the prominence of the top of Conference USA. But yeah, I think this is a down year for Jacksonville State. And a lot of these teams, I'm telling you, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but a lot of these teams have to retool defensively. Group of 5 conferences are just farm systems for Power 4 conferences. That's the fact of the matter is, as soon as you put in a good season, offensively or defensively, you're being wooed by teams with much higher aspirations than Conference USA. So I don't blame them. NIL money is a big thing too. So, these teams just really have to. This is where the money is made. This is where the sausage is made in college football, in my opinion. You get these great coaches that really have to coach. Now, I'm not saying, top program guys don't coach, because obviously they do. Culture is a huge, big thing. But these guys are consistently pumping out talent year after year after year, and there's no breaks. These guys are consistently hit with transfers, graduations, NIL money, all that kind of stuff, and they just continue to pump out talent. These are the real coaches of college football, in my opinion. Group of 5 coaches do not get enough love. And that leads us to maybe the biggest surprise of the video. At 4, I have the Middle Tennessee State Blue Raiders with a record prediction of 7-5. And you're going to say, Peter, that's crazy. Last year they went 3-9. Yeah, I get it, but teams can turn it around. Derek Mason was hired last year. A lot of expectations. He is firmly settled into his own here at Middle Tennessee State. And this team not only kept a bunch of offensive and defensive players in the right spots, they got way better. They got more experience under their belt. They added a couple transfer players as well. They didn't lose a lot on either side of the ball. And I think that Derek Mason's philosophy and his coaching is really going to shine this year. And this is a wide open Conference USA. Like I mentioned so many times before, like I'll mention again, Conference USA has so many teams that need to retool. Why not a team that comes up from the ashes of last year and rises and gets a top 4 finish like Middle Tennessee State? They got a great coach. They have a good culture. They have a lot of talent on the offensive and defensive side, a lot of experience. I don't see why this team can't shock a lot of people and finish in the top 4. And that brings me to potentially the best coach in Conference USA and one of the best teams with one of the weirdest mascots of all time. The Western Kentucky Hilltoppers here. I have them at a record of 8-4. Tyson Helton is just allergic to losing with this team. Despite seemingly having to navigate, roster turnover every single year, whether it be through transfers, graduations, NFL draft, this team produces talent and they know how to win for the most part. In the last 4 years, the Hilltoppers have won at least 8 games, and they played for the Conference USA title in 2 of those 4 years. So Tyson Helton has a firm grasp on this team. They're bringing in a couple transfers from Abilene Christian. So if you guys, a quarterback and a wide receiver duo from Abilene Christian. So if you guys aren't familiar with a Abilene Christian to Western Kentucky pipeline, look no further than Bailey Zappi and what he did at Western Kentucky. So Jarius Mack is a player that I think is going to break out in a big way this year. Noah Myers is a returning tight end that I think is going to be the number 1 target. DeMarco Williams last year coming off really strong years, 2 fumble recoveries, 2 forced fumbles. I think he's going to make a huge impact team. Defensively, they really need to know. This is probably going to be one of the biggest. And I say regression year, and you look at the record, and you're going to say, how is 8-4 a regression when you just said they've won at least 8 games the last 4 years? But I'm in terms of play. I mean, I think they're really going to have to grind out a lot of wins. Helton really has his work cut out for him this season. A lot of uncertainties on the offensive side, a ton of turnover on the defensive side. If there's anyone that can navigate that type of roster turmoil, it's going to be Tyson Helton. I firmly think he is the best coach in Conference USA. And unfortunately, the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers just miss out on the conference championship. And yet again, we're going to sound like a broken record here. At number 2, I have the Sam Houston State Bearkats. I love that they spelled the cats with the K instead of the C. But I had them at a record prediction of 9-3. They won 10 games last year after a firm readjustment period moving up to the FBS. It really shocked a lot of people last year. Phil Longo is taking over, coming back to Sam Houston State. I believe he made stops along the way at Ole Miss. And I want to say, I don't remember the other team off the top of my head, but he's coming back with more of an offensive-minded philosophy, as last year Sam Houston State really was able to rely on their defense, but they have more than enough firepower on the offensive side to work with a Phil Longo type of offense. The defensive side is tough. They lost basically every single one of their starters last year. I don't think they have a single starter returning, or if it is, it's one. And I think it's Antavius Fish. And the only reason why, no disrespect to Antavius Fish, the only reason that I have him as my defensive player of the year is because of his name. I mean, Antavius Fish is just a remarkable name on all levels. And I think it was firmly deserving of a Defensive Player of the Year candidacy. But yeah, the Sam Houston State Bearcats are really the biggest question mark for me is how fast are they going to be able to adapt to this long go offense? And how retooled is this defense? Because it's going to be flipped. The script is going to be flipped. Last year, Sam Houston was able to rely on their defense while the offense kind of struggled. I think it's going to be the opposite this year. But either way, I think the Sam Houston State Bearcats are a really well-run program. They have a roster on the offensive side built to win. And I think that they make their first Conference USA championship in 2025. And then at number 1, I have the Liberty Flames. A down year from them last year where they only won 8 games. Still went 7-2 in the conference, I believe. So Liberty is just a firmly dominant Conference USA team. Regardless of the out-of-conference games, they always just seem to know how to win against Conference USA opponents. Jamie Chadwell just really has a good thing going here. And they seemingly always get good quarterbacks for the most part. You know, when Liberty kind of came up, you had Malik Willis, you had Caden Salter, now they have Ethan Vasco, which I think arguably is probably the worst out of the 3. But Caden Salter did transfer to Colorado. Vasco comes in, he's going to take the helm of this high-powered offense. Dexter Ricks Jr. is probably one of the best corners in this entire conference, so I'm super excited to see what he does here this year, and a lot of uncertainty for the wide receiver room for the Flames, but they have more than enough talent to break out in a big way. This is just a super well-run team from top to bottom. Again, they're going to have to deal with some turnover on the offensive side. I think they only bring back 2 starters on the offensive line. They only bring back their top 3 tacklers last year, so a lot of production to replace. But this is a well-oiled machine. This is the Kansas City Chiefs of Conference USA. They are always going to be around that conference championship game. They just know how to win in Conference USA. And really, that's the big thing for me is they just know how to win in the division. And that's why I think it might be boring, but I think that they do walk away as the top spot of Conference USA. And then that leads us to our Conference USA championship game, which is the Sam Houston State Bearcats against the Liberty Flame. And then, of course, as my winner, I do, unfortunately, to you Sam Houston State fans, I have Liberty taking the top spot yet again after a down year last year. I think Ethan Vasco really kind of comes into his own here in this wide open, electric Liberty type offense. And I think that he leads them to glory. This is a weakened Conference USA that we've seen in quite some time. The defense, this is going to be like the Big 12 of 10 years ago, where we're just going to see shootouts left and right. I think a lot of teams are going to have to rely on their offensive firepower, Liberty included, and I think that they have more than enough firepower to get the job done. And like I said before, they just know how to win in Conference USA. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. There are my 2025-26 Conference USA predictions. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. Thank you guys so much for watching today. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And I will see you in the next one.